Hello, and welcome back to the ministry, and we're picking up on part 2 of DisEnchanted. And I was making the point of saying that it's a daily choice to continue to walk in the alignment of the Lord. But even the best of them have slipped and fallen off of the walk with the Lord. I've seen ministers, I have seen people that they slowly allow the corruption of the environment around them to infiltrate them, and it slowly takes a toll that before they can even realize it, they have become what they hated. Staying on the side of good when you have such a heavy level of external pressure to give into the temptation of the world, that you may have a heavy weight in the spirit, but the weight of the consistency of the battle to get every little thing done over time can wear you down. And the temptation to want to do it the easy way, to walk the easy route, that will lead you right into lust, which will breed malice, discontent, perversion, or perverse actions, going against the will of God. And you will then in turn into Eve. Because the serpent is always going to be just looking for a way to seduce you onto his side. My bishop did a word about 2 years ago, and in it he did an example where he used one of the pastors, and he told the person to walk out into the audience. He said, walk and keep walking, but he was talking to the person while they were walking, and he told them right when to stop. And he said, you see how far away that you got from me? I'm standing here on the stage, and look how far you are from me. And he said, that is the way that the enemy does you. You will get distracted, and the next thing you know, you didn't even realize how far you came away from God in the process. Because you're following the daily rituals, you're doing the routines, you're just doing, but you have no relationship with God. The biggest warning I can give you is that when you get to where you're going, don't lose your relationship with God, because so many have gotten to the promise and forgotten the promise keeper. So many have gotten over to the other side, and they started to maintain their ritual things that they did, but then over time, as the blessings came in and things got good, that they began to slowly become complacent and lost their zeal and their vigor for the things of God. And they don't even know where it went. Sometimes someone outside of you has to make you realize that you're losing yourself. God will send people alongside you that if you're getting too far left, he's going to bring in people that are going to be like, hey, you're losing your place. Get back in alignment. Because he will send those people to you. He will send the people that will prophetically witness to you. That will be the ones that need to say the prayers that will bring you back into alignment with the order of the things of God. But you have to make the choice to snap out of your prodigal and counterfeit state because you have allowed the desires to control you and consume you. And you end up becoming the Jezebel in the Ahab situation. That person, the people that pray for you have to pray for you in order for you to come back into right alignment and come back to your spiritual sense. Because when you are under the control of your inner enemies and have allowed the spirits to take control of you, for when the enemy sees that his house has been swept clean, he brings 7 other. He don't come back himself. He brings 7 people worse than he was. So realize that when you slip away from God, that you have now allowed 7 spirits to enter your body that will then be worse and harder to get rid of than the spirits that you had to go through to get rid of when you went through the deliverance the first time. You understand what I'm saying? Don't nobody want that. Who wants that? Why? Because you fainted. You allowed the door or several doors to be opened and position you in a place that gave the devil place in your life. There, and the people around you, the ones God has anointed, God will anoint people that will be in prayer for you. Their fight for you. Just like you fought for your prodigal, they will have to fight for you to make sure that you stay on track. When the prayer, when the fasting is completed, you will have to return to your senses. How can this happen? You opened a door. You opened yourself up to witchcraft. You came into agreement with witchcraft. You performed Christian witchcraft by manipulating the outcome through pride or your own desires. You came into alignment with a level of contamination. And you also may have come into agreement with toxic leadership. I spoke about this in a previous video where I was talking about the young man that ended up dying because he followed the prophet that was his mentor. The end thereof was death. You don't need that, nor do you want it. You become power hungry. I was looking yesterday at a clip of Brandy performing. Some of you are called to creative positions that's going to place you smack dab in the middle of Hollywood. You're going to be in the middle of music industry. You're going to be in the middle of some of these places. Anybody that's called to creativity, you may be called to positions that fall directly in these places. And when I tell you and you know, temptation there is a different beast. And because it is a different beast, you have to be so cautious. I remember as I was watching the clip of her, I thought of the fact that what happens when you get into that position? You got the light on you. You got the dances, you got what have you, and you start to feel the position that you're in because you have to have the energy, right? In order to be in that spotlight. You can't not feel your position in that space, but you have to keep a clear head when you're there to realize this is where I'm at when I'm on this stage, but when I walk off of it, I am God's all day long. You cannot allow that position to allot you the ability to lose who you are and your centering. That's another way in which you can lose you and allow the enemy to come in through various different holes, because pride come in as a performer. I'm sure a lot of y'all can name some. Pride, that narcissistic, Jezebelic power trip of being in that position. Especially when you get the crowds and the crowds are starting to yell your name and all of this type of stuff. And God's kind of had me. It's funny, I was looking at a clip last night. I don't know how much time I got. Okay. I was looking at a clip last night, and it was from an old Disney cartoon that I used to watch. The Goofy movie. And I actually was looking to see if I could find it on the app that I watch my movies on, because I haven't watched that movie in years. And I remember I had that thing on tape. I watched it over and over and over again when I was a kid. And it's something that the Lord brought attention to in relation to my kingdom marriage, in relation to that film. And I was like, oh, but I'm going to say this. The power trip that the son had in that clip, it was a clip where he and his friends had set up to take control of the cafeteria, to take the principal's moment during the assembly, and to take it over and become like, turn it into a mini concert for this the fictitious entertainer that was for that show. But the main character, he, Goofy's son, when he did it, he became power tripped in that moment, that he had to become the character in which he was playing. Meaning he had to become the entertainer. And he was feeling out what it was like to get all the attention, and the entire cafeteria and everybody, the entire assembly, everybody was just acting like, oh my God, you are the it. Oh my God. They're like, you are so cool. You're so awesome. This, that, and the other thing. Everybody was in love with him because of what he did. You gotta come to the realization that in whatever it is that God has called you to pursue, this ain't about you. It's about the calling that God has put on your life. And you can't allow what attention that calling has given you to make you forget whose you are. Okay? I definitely knew I needed to say that, because that's like what this film was talking about. We see this happen with people that also have a hustle mentality that operate in their own strength. Do you realize that 95% of celebrities, the 7 traits of, I believe it's anxiety? I wrote them down in some notes, and it comes with that hustle mentality of feeling like you need to have control and operating in your own strength. You in turn, especially once you've gotten that popularity, may find yourself feeling like you need to take the reins out of God's hands. Okay, I got here. We got this. It's moving. We got, especially if you have a public platform where you're a performer or something like that, and it's that element like, yeah, the crowds are hollering at me and all of this kind of stuff. I got this. And God be like, you think you got this, but if I let my hand up off of you and you feel the true weight of this position, the energy that it takes, the only way that you could ever maintain it without God's hands on it is if you made a deal with the devil and put it into the enemy's hands. And are you willing to sacrifice all that you've done with God to sell it all to the devil, who is going to make you pay it back before you die, if he does not sacrifice your life in order to get it? Because the devil is always looking for the right moment to present you with the offer. Remember Esau, who sold his birthright for a bowl of soup. Because the enemy will wait until you think that you got it together. And God said, I'm not going to allow you to do this without my hand on you. And you feel the true weight of that? And the devil will be like, I'll help you. But you got to do this for me if I do. When you return to your senses, come back to yourself, make it right, forgive, and make peace with your enemies. Meaning, once you snap out of your power trip mode, where you are operating outside of God's will and literally risking sabotage through a form of witchcraft and manipulation, pride and jealousy, when you come out of that, then you're going to have to fix everything that you did in order to get there. Meaning you have to do it the right way. Repent. You're going to have to go through deliverance again. It may not be to the level that you had to go through in your season of wilderness, but you may have to go through your season of wilderness just because you fell off. And we as children of God, just the thought of the things that we had to go through in our wilderness, are you willing to risk that? I mean, seriously, are you willing to risk having to go back through another season of wilderness on the promised land side? Mind you. In order to what? For what? Because you got overzealous in your position? You weren't willing to wait on God? You thought that you had something in control, so you was going to do it yourself? Because you allowed pride to take over? Jealousy, envy, your own control issues? Is it really that worth it? And when you come back to your senses and come back to yourself, you're going to have to make it right, forgive, and make peace with those enemies. Then you're going to have to come up with a balanced solution. The balanced solution was always there. What happens is when we become tired, it becomes dangerous because we no longer want to think about the balanced solution, because the balanced solution seems like it's way more work than what the enemy is going to offer. Here's the apple that's full of poison. Here's a solution that's going to cut away the process. You never are going to be able to skip the process, so I don't understand why we try to do it. Because the enemy's always going to be, I'll give it to you without you having to go through that process. And God's like, you can do that if you want, but you're going to end up rerouting yourself and you're going to take twice as long to get to the other side of this situation. Do it if you want to, but you're going to have to go through the process. Refer to my video talking about God's GPS, supernatural GPS system. Okay. Then you come with a balanced solution that everyone can get their desired outcome through communication and making decisions that had been avoided. Issues are then cleared up, smoothed over, and everyone now can really live happily ever after. What am I saying? There is a level of communication that's necessary, and certain things are going to need to be dealt with by making hard decisions, drawing hard lines, creating correct boundaries. The things that a lot of people don't want to do and prefer to avoid because they'd rather operate in pride, avoid processes, avoid making certain decisions, avoid confronting people, dealing with the things that have been exposed to them, so on and so forth. Who is dealing with the people that you gotta cut off, dealing with the people that you gotta deal with, making the shifts and the changes. A lot of people just would rather, hey, let me be runner. Hey, let me just not deal with that. Hey, let me just. But the only way that you're going to be able to deal with it, you can either do it the cheating way, which is not of God, which is going to lead you into manipulation, witchcraft, and putting yourself in danger with the Lord, or you're going to have to do it the correct way through communication, decision making, and going through the process that's necessary in order to make the hard decisions that is going to get you the right outcomes. But some people want to avoid those things. Don't allow yourself to avoid them. I know in time, sometimes complacency will allot you the ability. You get tired. You don't want to deal with it. I'm tired of dealing with these processes. I'm tired of dealing with all this stuff. I'm tired. And then you already tired. And then now you married. Now you got kids. You trying to deal with your husband. You trying to deal with the children. You got decisions that y'all gotta make. You got communication things between you and your spouse. You're trying to deal with the emotional pulling between your spouse and the children, and let alone anybody else that is involved that may be an assistance to you outside of your desires, that your wants and your needs. And it's those other things that make you feel like, do I exist in this reality at all? So it's finding that balance. It's just an adjustment. It's a shift. You're going through a transition. But understand that you will reach your desired outcome, but you have to be willing to walk with God and not let his hand go even when shiny object syndrome comes up. So I talked about this before in the graduation word. Just be careful. Be aware. Let the Lord be in the midst of these things. Let God be in control, because he's the ultimate waymaker. He's the one that leads and guides and directs this thing. He's the one that is in the fullness of the control of this situation. But you got to allow him to remain in control. And I know it can either become difficult to continue to maintain the relationship that you had in the beginning later on. This is the same thing that we have been fighting for with our God ordained spouses. We are the ones that pulled them back to God to the degree that they needed to get to God. But there may come a time, and this is something I've discussed this, and I wanted to even make this point of saying, this has been a concern of mine. I'm like, what happens when I've been walking with you for a while? Hey, I'm fresh to God. Me and God been walking together for about 9 years. So I'm not fresh, but what happens when it's 20 years in? Am I going to be this on fire 11 years from now, when I have other things in my life? Business, husband, kids, all of these kinds of things. Will my attention be as attentive to the Lord? I always pray to the Lord, Lord, show me how I'm going to maintain you when I get there, because I don't want to do this without you. But we're going to have to find our balance. Um, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years down the road, depending on how old your God ordained spouse is in comparison to you, how long they've been walking with the Lord. Some of them, the main reason that they kind of slipped off was because they've been walking with God for so long that they got pulled out of order. And it can happen. And I'm like, what happens when we get to that level where time has passed and we start to slip away? Will it be our spouses that are going to pull us back? Will it be our godly friends that are going to pull us back when we start to go over our deep end? What's going to pull us back? Yes, God can do it. God will threaten you with a wilderness season. Like, let me put you in a wilderness for about a year. You be good? You good? Are you good? Let me remind you who you are. But I always wonder, is like, is God going to just snatch me like he did in the early days, 20 years from now? Or is he going to let me test those waters and then say, now that I let you see what that felt like, now I'm going to snatch you for the next 2 years and get you back on track in a level? Because I've seen and I've heard some ministers' testimonies as to what it's like to be um, pulled by the Lord and have to come back to their senses and then apologize and come back into order with the alignment of what was God's will for their life anyway. But I came here to bring you this outline of DisEnchanted just to give you the understanding. You gotta make sure that you're remaining in the presence of God, that you do not lose God and literally allow the enemy place in you. That's what this was about, especially depending on where you're called to be and where God has called you to serve him. Don't forget God. Don't lose God as you are coming into all of these blessings. Let the Lord lead you, because you don't want to turn around and find out that when you get to the pearly gates, God say, you've done all of these things in my name, but I never knew you. Food for thought for y'all. I hope this blessed you. This is Taj McCameron for Love, Faith, Peace, and Blessings Ministries. Until next time.